You move quietly along the Via Sacra, the sacred way, as the city of Rome breathes in its earliest waking moments. The bluish hush still lingers, soft and cool, yet already you can feel the slow rising of the city's pulse beneath your feet. This is where your long walk through Rome's streets truly begins. Not because dawn is dramatic, but because this is the natural point in your drifting journey where the city is just beginning to reveal itself. For now, everything is gentle enough to draw you into its rhythm, inviting you to slow your own breathing and match the city's measured exhale. You listen to the faint echo of your footsteps against the paving stones. Each slab beneath you was placed with persistence and human hands centuries ago, and though historians still argue whether the earliest layouts were planned masterpieces or chaotic accumulations of convenience, the effect on you now is the same, an intimate sense of being inside a living structure. The stones are cool, smooth in the middle from generations of sandals, heavier at the edges where carts rarely passed. You walk with awareness, as though each slab is a small threshold, guiding you deeper into the heart of ancient Rome. The air carries the earliest hints of activity. A vendor's wooden shutter shifts somewhere behind you, the sound crisp in the morning stillness. A mule stirs and shakes its harness. The faint scrape of sweeping begins from an unseen portico. These sounds don't break the quiet, they shape it. They tell you the city is beginning to stir, yet it does so without hurry. Rome knows its own size. It knows its citizens will swirl into its streets soon enough, filling every corner with voices, footsteps, laughter, arguments, and the unending business of empire. But right now, there is time. You feel the luxury of these minutes, the long breath before the world presses forward. As you glide farther along the sacred way, you notice details that will blur later under the weight of the day. A roof tile still wet with night's condensation. A bronze lamp bracket catching the pale glow and throwing a thin reflection downward. The faint smell of cooling hearth ash drifting from the domus of a patrician household. The scent reminds you that thousands of small fires have been burning across the city for hours. Bakers, night guards, households, all part of a system that never truly sleeps. Rome rests, yes, but it never empties. One figure steps into your path, an elderly man moving steadily with a broom of bundled twigs. He wears simple wool and his movements are slow but practiced. Street sweepers were often slaves or freedmen assigned to their sections of the city like caretakers of corridors. He nods once, not surprised to see someone wandering early. You sense that to him the sacred way at this hour is a familiar companion, a place much gentler than the noisy day it will soon endure. As you walk past, he continues his rhythmic motions, sweeping dust into small piles that will vanish long before the crowds return. Your journey draws you toward the rising outlines of monuments, their silhouettes still softened by the last traces of night. Marble arches loom like pale giants, and the bases of statues wait for daylight to bring their carved features into sharper form. Even now you can feel their presence, confident, unmoved, repositories of triumphs and tragedies, each one standing guard over memories the city refuses to forget. You sense why the Romans built so many monuments along their streets. They wanted reminders everywhere, visible proofs of power and continuity. Walking here, you understand how those reminders shape the psyche of the people who pass them each day. A cart creaks nearby, pulled by an ox whose slow steps echo between the stone walls. Night deliveries were common. Certain loads were legally restricted to after-hours transport to avoid daytime congestion. The driver raises 2 fingers in greeting as he passes. His cart smells faintly of fresh straw and damp wood. Soon he will veer off toward a bakery or warehouse, but for now, he shares the sacred way with you, 2 travellers moving through the same quiet hour. A soft breeze moves through the street, carrying with it the faint metallic scent of the nearby temple's bronze doors. You can almost hear in your imagination the deep resonant clang they would make when opened for morning rituals. Priests will arrive soon, carrying small offerings, lighting lamps, whispering invocations meant to guide the city into the new day. Faith in Rome was rarely private. It was woven into the streets themselves, visible in every small shrine and every stone placed with symbolic weight. You feel that intermingling now, public life and sacred belief gently touching like overlapping circles. As you continue down the sacred way, the street widens just slightly, revealing traces of the day to come. A pair of young assistants hurry by, balancing a tray covered in cloth. Another vendor rolls open his stall, revealing amphorae of early pressed olive oil that gleam faintly in the bluish light. A woman adjusts her shawl, guiding a sleepy child forward with a quiet murmur. Rome is waking, but slowly, as though savouring the transition. You pass beneath an archway where the stone beneath your feet carries the smoother polish of heavier use. Each arch frames a moment, one offering a glimpse toward the Forum, another toward the distant hills. You let your gaze wander, recognizing how the city's design draws you along curved lines, funneling your attention toward key structures and spaces. Roman urban planning, deliberate or accidental, knew how to guide the senses. Even the sounds here change subtly. Echoes narrow, footsteps sharpen, soft breezes concentrate. You find yourself adjusting your breathing to match this architectural rhythm. Soon the light shifts. Not sunrise exactly, just the world brightening by degrees, moving from deep blue into softer, clearer tones. The edges of marble catch this change first, glowing slightly, as though each monument holds its own thin ember of illumination. Shadows stretch long across the stones but remain gentle enough not to interrupt your pace. Rome is neither asleep nor fully awake, and you move through this in-between state as though walking inside the city's memory. Ahead you see a group of young men carrying baskets of produce. Their sandals slap lightly against the stones. They laugh softly about something you cannot hear. One tosses a fig into the air and catches it, the fruit's purple skin momentarily luminous in the early light. Their presence feels like a promise of what the markets will become, vibrant, noisy, overflowing with scents and colours, but not yet. For now they merely cross your path like figures from a quiet painting. You feel the sacred way guiding you onward, gently pulling you deeper into the living story of Rome. The city's heartbeat is rising, steady and insistent, but still soft enough that you can sense each individual moment within it. There is no hurry, no jolt of transition, only the gradual unfolding of a world that has been waiting centuries for you to walk its streets and notice the fine details that daytime might conceal. You keep moving forward, letting the city open itself naturally to your presence. The sacred way widens beneath your feet as your steps carry you naturally toward the Forum, the heart of Rome's daily rhythm. The light has strengthened now, but only just, leaving a softness over the stones that makes every column and cornice appear slightly dreamlike. You drift forward with the sense that the city is lifting its eyelids, revealing a space that has been awake far longer than any of its inhabitants. The Forum is not a place that sleeps. It merely dims when the people leave, holding its breath until they return to stir its stones back into conversation. Your pace slows as you approach the first cluster of columns. They tower above you with a confidence that centuries have not shaken, their fluted shafts catching light along faint grooves worn by weather and time. Between them lies air that seems charged with anticipation. This is the place where triumphs were announced, where laws were read aloud, where arguments flared and subsided like sparks caught in a wind. Even in this early hour you can feel the remnants of those voices, faint, overlapping, almost like a chorus humming just beneath the edge of hearing. A pair of clerks passes you, carrying wooden tablets and wax styluses. They speak in low tones, already rehearsing the disputes they expect to encounter today. In Rome, even the earliest conversations feel purposeful. Their sandals scuff lightly across the stones, tracing paths worn by generations of feet. You follow their movement for a moment, noticing how they instinctively navigate around patches of darker pavement where spilled oil had once stained the stone. Such marks remain stubbornly visible even after years of sun and cleansing, as though the Forum insists on holding on to its memories. A merchant arranging bolts of cloth meets your gaze briefly. His stall is barely assembled, just a wooden frame and neatly stacked goods, but his attention is already divided between his inventory and the potential customers drifting in. He lifts a piece of dyed wool, allowing it to unfurl in the air, checking the quality of the colour in the morning light. The cloth glows faintly, deep red along its edges, likely imported from the eastern provinces. You can tell from his careful handling that it is expensive. Soon he will shout prices and haggle with bold gestures, but for now he murmurs to himself, testing the day's tone. As you continue moving, the Forum's geography unfolds around you with deliberate grandeur. The arching forms of basilicas rise on either side. Tall pediments tilt into the brightening sky. Statues gaze down with the serene detachment of marble beings who have seen everything before. Yet beneath this imposing architecture lies something deeply human, the small habits of daily life already finding their rhythm. A woman crouches by a fountain, refilling jars. A young assistant hurries with a handful of bronze weights. A boy feeds scraps to a stray dog whose tail thumps happily against a column base. The sounds remain gentle but increasingly layered. A shutter slam echoes lightly. A vendor rattles a pile of terracotta cups. A priest clears his throat as he approaches a nearby temple, preparing the first quiet petition of the day. Somewhere beyond the basilica, a group laughs, the crisp, unguarded laughter of friends who have met earlier than their duties require. Rome's streets often held such moments, small oases of camaraderie within the larger machinery of empire. You pass near the rostra, the speaker's platform, and without meaning to, your breath catches. The structure retains an aura of authority even in stillness. Brass plaques gleam faintly along the front, and you imagine the countless speeches delivered here. Fiery appeals, calm reasonings, impassioned demands. Historians still argue whether the Forum's influence rested more on political power or public theatre. But walking here, among these stones that shaped so many decisions, you feel both so strongly that separating them becomes impossible. Politics in Rome was never just law, it was performance. A senator in a neatly wrapped toga rustles past you, trailed by two younger attendants. They walk briskly, their pace suggesting they have already been briefed on the matters awaiting them. One carries a leather scroll case decorated with a tiny gold clasp. The other holds a basket of figs, perhaps a modest gift for someone whose cooperation they hope to secure. Even in this seemingly quiet moment, negotiations are already beginning, softly, subtly, like the earliest ripples on still water. Nearby, a group of craftsmen sets up their workspace for the day. They unfold tools, chisels, mallets, small brushes, and clear dust from a partially carved slab. Their movements are steady and practiced, each gesture contributing to the slow, patient transformation of raw stone into purposeful structure. You pause to watch one artisan test his chisel against the marble, listening for a specific pitch, a subtle ring that tells him the stone is ready for shaping. He nods in satisfaction and begins tapping lightly, the first crisp notes of work singing into the morning air. Your path drifts toward the centre of the Forum, where the sounds gather and multiply. Conversations overlap like interwoven threads. A man calls out prices for freshly milled grain. A pair of women barter over amphorae of olive oil, each offering reasons why the other should concede a little more. A group of youths carries crates of vegetables toward the marketplace, their bare feet slapping rhythmically against the stones. These are not the loud, chaotic shouts of midday commerce. They are soft, exploratory beginnings, like musicians tuning their instruments before a performance. The scent of baking bread reaches you faintly from a nearby side street, warm and comforting. It mixes with the sharper tang of metal from a blacksmith forge and the earthy smell of fresh produce. Rome is a city of layered aromas, each telling a small story. You breathe it in, noting how quickly the sensory palette shifts as more people arrive. The Forum, for all its grandeur, is still a place of everyday needs. As you wander farther, you begin hearing whispers that carry hints of emotion, hope, anxiety, excitement. Two men discuss the price of land outside the city. A woman mutters about a relative's illness. A courier reads from a wax tablet, reciting an announcement he will soon deliver publicly. His voice is low, steady, rehearsed. You sense he takes pride in speaking clearly, knowing people depend on his words to guide their decisions. Moving past the Temple of Castor and Pollux, you glimpse a cluster of young students gathered around an older teacher who gestures animatedly toward the surrounding architecture. He traces shapes in the air, describing some principle of rhetoric or history. His students nod, some solemnly, others with distracted curiosity. Even as you drift past them, you catch fragments, and the weight of legacy, and the shaping of civic identity. Remember the stones beneath us. His words underline something you already feel. Walking through the Forum is walking through the mind of Rome. The activity continues to thicken. A man leading a small goat navigates between stalls. A messenger runs by, his cloak flaring behind him. Workers haul crates toward the basilica, grunting softly with effort. All around, the pulse of the city strengthens, gathering momentum. Yet even as the Forum grows busier, you remain inside a calm, unhurried stream of movement, observing everything from just beneath the surface. The city is awakening fully now, and you are part of its flow. A faint breeze carries the clatter of distant tools and the soft chanting of priests beginning their rituals. Light glints off bronze, marble, clay. You sense the Forum shifting from early morning quiet into the beginnings of its daily crescendo. But the transition is smooth, organic, like the deepening of a colour rather than a sudden change. The heartbeat you first sensed on the sacred way is now stronger, resonating through the stones beneath your feet. You stand in the centre of Rome's living theatre, surrounded by columns, voices, footsteps, and histories overlapping like woven cloth. The day has begun, the Forum is alive, and you move forward, following the current of the city as it guides you deeper into its unfolding story. You move gradually out of the Forum's swelling hum, letting its mixture of voices, footsteps, and early negotiations fade behind you as the streets guide you toward the marketplaces that pulse just beyond the formal boundaries of power. The shift happens subtly. Columns give way to awnings, marble facades surrender to wooden stalls. The air thickens with scents that feel less ceremonial and more alive. Fresh vegetables, damp earth, crushed herbs under rushing feet. Here, Rome exposes the gears that keep it turning. This is where the empire breathes through its people, its goods, its unpolished everyday exchanges. The first stalls you pass are modest, their owners still settling in. A young woman arranges figs and pomegranates in neat symmetrical piles, adjusting each fruit with care. She pauses now and then to wipe her hands on her tunic, watching the flow of early customers with the restrained confidence of someone who knows her produce will sell quickly. Above her head, a strip of canvas rustles in the morning breeze. Its edges flap like gentle wings, shading the fruit from the rising light. Beyond her booth lies the larger expanse of the Macellum, Rome's central marketplace, where wooden platforms creak beneath crates of fish, baskets of greens, and amphorae sealed tight with wax. The ground here bears a sheen from last night's cleaning. Water still clings in the grooves between stones, reflecting the colourful chaos assembling above them. You step carefully around a puddle that smells faintly of brine, evidence of early fishmongers who hauled in their wares before dawn. Nearby, a boy with quick feet and quicker eyes darts between stalls, delivering messages from vendors who haven't yet left their posts. He seems to know every shortcut, slipping behind baskets and beneath ropes with movements as fluid as a creature made for this environment. He calls a greeting to you as he passes, a simple wordless sound that carries friendliness without slowing him down. A sudden ripple of laughter rises from a cluster of butchers sharpening their blades along a stone ledge. Their movements are rhythmic, almost musical, and though the work itself demands precision, the men treat it with an ease born from repetition. They trade jokes too quietly for you to hear the details, but the tone conveys camaraderie, a shared understanding of the day's labour ahead. One of them lifts a slab of meat, examining it critically before hanging it beneath his stall's wooden beam. The iron hook creaks slightly as it takes the weight. The scent of fresh bread begins to drift toward you, warm, earthy, comforting. It threads through the sharper smells of fish and herbs, drawing your attention toward a baker's stand where loaves, round, crisp, and marked with the labyrinthine stamp that identifies their maker, cool in orderly rows. The baker, a broad-shouldered man with flour dusting his hair and arms, wipes sweat from his brow despite the mild air. His eyes meet yours for a moment. He nods once, a silent acknowledgement of the shared pleasure in this moment before the crowds haggle over every crumb. You step onward, deeper into the marketplace where luxury goods intermingle with simpler items in a way that feels almost surreal. One stall displays imported spices from distant lands, sealed in tiny containers wrapped in cloth. Another offers cheap sandals woven from local leather. Across from them, a seller of fine glass vessels holds up his merchandise to catch the growing light, watching it refract in delicate colours. The contrast between marble and mud, fine craftsmanship and rough necessities, folds into a single living tapestry. Historians still argue whether this marketplace diversity reflects Rome's genius for integration or its insatiable appetite for expansion. But here, moving among the stalls, you sense both interpretations are true in their own way. A commotion breaks out near a cart piled high with cabbages. Two women argue over price, waving their hands with the animated gestures of seasoned negotiators. Their voices rise but never sharpen into true hostility. This is a daily ritual, a dance of persuasion where both expect to win something. You watch them circle the same point again and again, testing each other's resolve until finally, with a huff and a laugh, they settle on a compromise. The vendor smiles after them, pleased not just with the sale, but with the lively energy they leave behind. At the centre of the Macellum stands a circular stone platform, slightly elevated, where town criers often deliver announcements. Today, a young man climbs atop it, clearing his throat with the seriousness of someone twice his age. He holds a wax tablet in one hand and begins reading news of grain shipments, tax adjustments, and the arrival of traders from the eastern provinces. His voice carries farther than you expect, bouncing between stalls and drawing a loose crowd. You stand among them, listening to updates that once shaped the daily decisions of thousands of Romans. The information may not affect you directly in this drifting moment, yet hearing it gives you the sense of standing at the crossroads of countless unseen motions. As you wander beyond the crier's circle, the sounds shift again. A group of children chases one another around baskets of garlic. A potter demonstrates how to shape clay, guiding a customer's hands gently so she can feel the wheel beneath her palms. A man selling spices pinches a bit of saffron between his fingers, letting the tiny threads fall like strands of sunlight. He smiles knowingly at your curiosity, then returns to smoothing the surface of his display. A stray dog tugs at a discarded crust near your feet. Its ribs show faintly beneath its fur, yet its tail wags with surprising enthusiasm when you offer a kind glance. Street animals formed their own quiet layers within Rome's markets, companions to some, nuisances to others. This one trots beside you for several steps before veering off toward a butcher's table, drawn by a stronger promise of food. As the marketplace swells with activity, you feel currents flowing through it, invisible yet forceful. There is an energy here that doesn't exist within the forum's structured grandeur. The forum may be the mind of Rome, but this place messy, vibrant, unrestrained is its stomach, its lungs, its bloodstream. Life moves here without pretense, goods come and go with dizzying speed. Decisions are made not in marble halls but in quick exchanges over baskets of grain. And yet somehow the marketplace remains breathtakingly human, grounded in the ordinary needs that shape extraordinary cities. You drift toward a stall where an elderly woman sells bundles of herbs, mint, thyme, rosemary, and several you don't recognize. She gestures for you to smell one cluster, its leaves releasing a sharp, clean fragrance when she crushes them lightly between her fingers. Her smile is small but warm, and though she says nothing, you feel the quiet pride she takes in her work. Every leaf here represents care, grown, gathered, tied and displayed with a tender insistence on quality. Farther along you hear the splash of water, a fisherman rinsing his hands in a basin after arranging his morning catch. Silver skulls shimmer in the light, forming tiny mirrors that reflect the motion around them. He hums a simple melody, rhythmic and steady, as though marking time for the waking marketplace. His humming blends with the soft rush of feet and with the murmur of early conversations, forming a comforting background song. By now, the marketplace feels fully alive. Any lingering quiet from the early morning has vanished, replaced not with chaos but with an organized, breathing complexity. You sense the thresholds shifting. Soon the crowds will grow thick, the calls louder, the negotiations more insistent. But in this moment, this golden space between preparation and frenzy, you experience the marketplace as the Romans themselves must have known it. Intimate enough to recognize faces, broad enough to represent the world. You pause before leaving, allowing yourself one last sweep of the scene. The Macellum stretches around you, vibrant and unrestrained. Goods from across the empire beckon. Local farmers call greetings to familiar customers. Children weave between tables with effortless ease. Rome's greatness, you realize, is not carried solely by its monuments or armies. It lives also in these markets of marble and mud, where everyday life unfolds with relentless, colourful force. You step onward, letting the city lead you toward its next rhythm. You sense the shift before you see it, the way the orderly lines of the marketplace seem to fray at the edges, giving way to a denser weave of sounds and scents drifting in from the narrow arteries ahead. The stalls thin, the air thickens, and the city's polished surfaces begin surrendering to something rawer, livelier, more tightly packed. You follow the gentle pull of these side streets until the broader paths narrow into slender corridors between tall, leaning buildings. Here marks your first true step into Subura, the district where Rome's everyday heartbeat accelerates into something vibrant and unrestrained. The entrance to Subura is unassuming, almost accidental. A crossroads where a baker's shop sits across from a cloth mender's doorway, both pressed into the space as though the city exhaled too quickly and the buildings were left to settle wherever they could. Laundry lines stretch overhead, draped from one insula to another, casting soft, shifting shadows across your path. They sway with the breeze, carrying the scents of soap, wool, and faint traces of last night's cooking fires. You continue inward, letting the street draw you past the last hints of marble. Subura does not pretend to be elegant. Its beauty lies in its density, its closeness, its sense of constant movement. The walls of the insulae rise sharply on either side, forming narrow canyons of brick and plaster where voices echo in layered rhythms. Women call down to neighbours from upper stories. Children chase one another through alleys barely wide enough for their spreading arms. Somewhere above, a potter's wheel hums steadily as hands shape clay into something useful for tomorrow's market. Ahead of you, a tavern keeper sweeps his doorstep, glancing up with a quick smile. His establishment is small, just a single room with smoky windows, but the aroma escaping through the doorway suggests spiced wine, roasted chickpeas, and the comforting warmth of long-simmered stews. Early patrons sit on low stools, murmuring over last night's gossip. Their laughter spills into the street like warm light. A musician in the corner plucks a stringed instrument, tuning it carefully, knowing the tavern will grow crowded when labourers finish their morning tasks. The street bends sharply, then narrows once more, and you notice a shoemaker crouched beside his doorway, stitching leather with practised rhythm. His tools lie in a neat row beside him, awl, hammer, knife, with tiny scraps of hide scattered across the stones like curled brown petals. He hums softly, a tune familiar enough that passers-by tap their fingers against their own hips in unconscious accompaniment. His hands move so confidently that you feel he could continue the work even in complete darkness. As you slip deeper into Subura, the atmosphere thickens with detail. Voices overlap in a dozen accents, Latin mingled with Greek, whispers of North Africa, hints of Syria, echoes from Gaul. This district, more than any other, gathers the empire's distant corners into a single compressed landscape. Immigrants, labourers, merchants, performers, scribes, midwives, and artisans live wall to wall, their stories as tightly arranged as the buildings themselves. It is here, in this deliberate tangle, that Rome breathes in new ideas and exhales something uniquely its own. You step aside for a man rolling a two-wheeled cart laden with dyed fabrics. The wheels groan against the uneven stones, but he pushes steadily, nodding politely as he passes. Behind him, a pair of children dart out from a side alley chasing a wooden hoop. Their bare feet slap against the pavement, echoing sharply through the canyon of walls. They shout in playful commands, weaving around water jars, stray cats, and baskets left out to dry. A sudden burst of laughter draws your eyes to a group of women gathered around a communal fountain. They fill jars while sharing news: who is expecting a child, whose husband has found work at the baths, whose eldest son performed well in his tutor's lessons. The fountain itself is modest, a worn stone basin fed by a thin trickle of aqueduct water, but the women treat it as a social hub, a place where conversations flow as steadily as the water. One woman splashes her friend lightly with her fingertips. The friend gasps, then laughs, the sound rising like a bright ribbon through the busy street. Farther ahead, you sense the layers of Subura growing denser. The buildings rise higher, leaning toward one another as though whispering secrets across the narrow spans. Their wooden balconies jut out unevenly, some reinforced with metal braces, others supported by faith and familiarity. You notice cracks in plaster, patched repairs, beams darkened with age. Yet despite the wear, everything here feels intensely lived in, cherished in its own practical way. Subura may lack the grandeur of the Forum, but it carries a warmth that marble cannot mimic. Passing a small workshop, you hear the clang of metal. Inside, a metalsmith hammers a strip of bronze into shape, each strike rhythmic and purposeful. Sparks dance briefly before fading into the dust. The smith barely glances up as you pass. His concentration is absolute. On the wall beside him hang finished pieces, buckles, fibulae, simple tools, each one tagged with a scrap of parchment. You sense the pride behind every piece. Subura's artisans rarely gain fame, but their work anchors the daily life of Rome. The smells here change with every step. One moment you breathe in fresh bread cooling beside an open window, the next, aromatic garlic sizzling in oil. A few paces later, the pungent tang of tanned leather overtakes everything else. These scents layer into a sensory map that guides you without signs or markers. Follow the sweetness of fruit and you'll find a family-run stall with baskets stacked high. Follow the sound of splashing water and you'll reach another fountain. Follow the louder, wilder laughter and you'll find a tavern or gaming house tucked into the ground floor of an insula. You make a turn that feels almost instinctive, guided by the rhythm of conversation and footsteps. Here the street opens slightly, revealing a small courtyard shared by several families. Children sit on the steps, playing with carved wooden animals. A grandmother, seated beneath a fading awning, tells a story in rich, animated tones. You catch fragments, tales of clever foxes, wandering spirits and ancient heroes. Her audience, wide-eyed and entranced, hangs on every word. Stories in Subura are currency as precious as coin. A young man brushes past you, carrying a basket of laundry on his hip. He offers a brief apology before weaving through the crowd. His tunic smells lightly of lavender, suggesting he works for one of the communal laundries nearby. Such laundries, often staffed by families, were hubs of rumour and humour. You imagine the chatter inside, cloth slapping stone, water splashing, voices rising and falling in endless waves. As you drift onward, you feel the district's pulse settle into your own. Subura's energy is not frantic, it is constant, unfiltered, alive. Everything here overlaps: craft and conversation, commerce and neighbourly ties, labour and leisure. You sense how these streets shape the people who live within them, how they learn to move with the shifting tides of crowds and errands, how they embrace the closeness as part of their identity. You pause for a moment beneath a wooden balcony draped with drying herbs. The scent of basil and sage wafts gently around you. Above, an elderly woman leans out to shake dust from a rug, sending tiny motes drifting down like shimmering grains. She smiles when she notices you, then resumes her work with unhurried motions. The scene feels timeless, as though it could belong to any century. Subura wraps around you, a living labyrinth where every corner reveals another layer of Roman life. And yet, despite its density, the district never feels suffocating. It feels like a tapestry, woven tightly, richly, vibrantly, each thread connected to its neighbour. You walk deeper still, letting the closeness of these lanes guide you into the beating heart of Rome itself. Leaving the dense web of Subura behind, you feel the streets loosen their hold on you. The tall insulae begin to open into wider passages, their shadows stretching long across the stones as you drift toward the river's faint, ever-present murmur. The Tiber has been whispering beneath the city all morning, but now its voice grows clearer, drawing you down through a sequence of narrowing alleys that ultimately release you into a calmer, quieter space near the riverbank. The air carries a different quality here, cooler, touched by moisture, threaded with the scent of silt and reeds. You feel yourself slowing as though the river's rhythm is deliberately coaxing you to match its pace. A stone bridge arches ahead, sturdy and elegant in its practicality. This is your path toward Trastevere, a quarter that sits both within Rome and slightly apart from it. Like a limb, the city stretches across the river to reach something new. You begin crossing, each step accompanied by the flow of water beneath you. The river moves steadily, unconcerned with the city's bustling routines, its surface glittering in broken shards of light. You pause halfway across and lean subtly toward the railing. Boats glide below, some carrying produce, others bundles of firewood, others passengers who sit quietly, enjoying the gentle sway. The boatmen shout greetings to one another, their voices floating upward, softened by distance. As you near the far side of the bridge, Trastevere reveals itself gradually, without ceremony. Its streets are narrower than those near the Forum, but wider than the compressed lanes of Subura. They twist and meander, shaped less by architectural design and more by the natural growth of a neighbourhood born from convergence, Immigrants, traders, sailors, craftsmen and storytellers all threading their lives into these winding paths. It feels different the moment you step onto the first stone, a shift in cadence to a looseness, a willingness to pause. A small cluster of market stalls greets you at the bridge's end. Their canopies flutter in the river breeze, displaying goods not commonly found in other parts of Rome. Spices from the eastern provinces sit in small bowls, deep orange, crimson, pale gold. A man from Judea arranges dates and figs in tidy pyramids. A woman from Nubia sells woven baskets dyed with natural pigments that catch the light in subtle, earthy hues. Their conversations create a soft mosaic of languages, each voice distinct yet intertwined. You watch a pair of Greek musicians tuning their instruments nearby, a lyre and a double flute. They test simple melodies, allowing their notes to wander across the square in exploratory arcs. Children pause to listen, swaying lightly or mimicking their finger movements. The musicians notice this and smile, adjusting their rhythm for their small audience. This district has always been a haven for performers who find comfort in the diversity of the crowd, where no single culture dominates and every style finds a place to belong. Walking farther into Trastevere, you pass workshops whose doors are propped open to catch the river breeze. A mosaic artist sits on a low stool sorting coloured tesserae into small bowls. Her fingers move with patient precision as she selects one tiny piece after another, fitting them together like deliberate moments in a story. She nods as you pass, holding up her work in progress, a swirling pattern of blues and greens that seems to echo the river's current. Even unfinished, it radiates motion. She returns to her work without speaking. The gesture was enough to convey her pride. Near the corner of a quiet street, a group of foreign sailors gathers outside a tavern painted with faded frescoes of waves and dolphins. Their clothing hints at distant coastlines, Egyptian linen, Greek-dyed wool, rough cloaks from the northern seas. They exchange stories in a jumble of languages, laughing at tales the others barely understand. One taps a rhythmic beat against a wooden barrel, a kind of improvised drum that draws curious glances from passers-by. The sound is upbeat, but not intrusive, blending naturally with the district's pulse. Trastevere's residential lanes wind unpredictably, curving around courtyards and slipping between houses that seem arranged more by instinct than plan. You turn into one such lane and find yourself in a quiet, shaded space where vines drape over a stone archway. The scent of crushed rosemary lingers in the air, likely from a household meal prepared earlier in the day. A woman stands on her balcony above, shaking out a blanket. When she sees you, she offers a warm, unhurried greeting, not out of obligation, but from the instinctive friendliness that seems woven into the neighbourhood's character. A potter's shop stands open nearby, its shelves lined with vessels of every shape, some tall and slender, others wide-bellied and decorated with intricate patterns. The potter himself stands at his wheel, guiding a mound of clay into form with gentle, confident pressure. His hands remain steady, even when a cat leaps gracefully onto the table beside him, rubbing its head against a finished pot. He smiles, nudging the cat aside without breaking his rhythm. The clay rises and narrows beneath his touch, becoming something functional, something beautiful. You feel a quiet admiration for the ease with which he balances precision and spontaneity. As you drift deeper, the neighbourhood's cultural mosaic becomes more apparent. You pass a small shrine decorated with lamps and garlands, a place where immigrant families offer prayers to deities not native to Rome. The air around it carries hints of incense unfamiliar to you, sweet and resinous, curling in delicate streams. Two women stand nearby, their hands pressed together in soft devotion. Their presence feels serene, grounded, a reminder that Trastevere is not merely a district, but a sanctuary for preserving customs from faraway homes. At the next bend in the road, you encounter a group of artisans who gather daily to share skills and stories. Today, a Syrian storyteller holds the attention of several children and adults alike. His hands move in wide, expressive gestures as he describes mythical landscapes and daring heroes. Even without understanding every word, you feel the enchantment woven into his voice. His audience leans closer, captivated. When he pauses for breath, the children urge him on and he grins, before continuing the tale with a renewed flourish. The river's influence remains constant throughout the district. You hear it faintly, a soft undercurrent beneath the chatter and footsteps. Many residents make their living from it. Fishermen, boat builders, net menders. Near a small dock, a young man kneels over a tangle of nets, repairing them with swift, methodical motions. His fingers work faster than your eyes can follow. He barely looks up when a boatman calls to him from the water, but his brief nod, confident and friendly, signals understanding between them. You walk closer to the water's edge, where sunlight dances across the ripples in broken, shimmering patterns. The Tiber carries stories from across the city, washing away the marketplace dust, reflecting the bridge's arches, humming softly beneath the footsteps of travellers. Standing here, you sense how the river shapes Trastevere's identity. It brings people in, carries goods out, and stitches this diverse community into the broader fabric of Rome, even as it preserves its distinct voice. Children scatter pebbles along the shore, laughing when the stones skip twice before sinking. A woman washes vegetables in a small basin, pausing to greet friends who pass by. A fisherman's daughter mends a tear in her father's net, while humming a tune she must have heard a dozen times. All of it forms a portrait of life lived without haste, without pretense, without the formality found across the river. You linger for a moment longer, letting the sounds and scents of Trastevere settle into you. This quarter is Rome's gentle whisper, a place where cultures merge without losing their edges, where stories travel farther than footsteps, where the river becomes both boundary and bond. As you prepare to continue your journey, you feel a warm calm drifting through you, carried on the same breeze that ruffles the river's surface. Trastevere leaves its imprint not through grandeur, but through the quiet intimacy of lives lived side by side, woven together by the simple, enduring flow of the Tiber. Leaving the gentle rhythms of Trastevere behind, you make your way back toward one of the main arteries that extends outward from the city's centre, a road that feels less like a street and more like a promise. Here the ground grows straighter, firmer, designed for distance rather than wandering. The light shifts subtly as you walk, brightening across larger, clearer spaces where buildings no longer press so tightly against one another. Rome begins to stretch out, breathing with a fuller chest, preparing you for a different kind of movement, one measured not in steps but in strides. Ahead, faint at first and then undeniable, comes the disciplined heartbeat of legionaries on the march. The sound reaches you long before the soldiers come into view, a rhythmic clatter of hobnailed sandals striking stone, steady as a drum. It is not loud, but it is relentless, a sound that seems capable of crossing entire provinces. You follow it, letting your steps fall into the cadence until it feels as though you are part of that momentum, drawn toward the source by the pull of ordered motion. As the road widens into a broad stretch lined with markers and distant milestones, the first glint of sunlight catches on bronze. Helmets, buckles, the edges of rectangular shields polished by dust and time. The column appears slowly, then with sudden clarity. A century of legionaries advances in tight formation, their feet landing in near-perfect unison. Each man carries the weight of equipment across his shoulders. Pack, tools, rations, weapons, all balanced with practiced ease. Their faces are focused, not grim but purposeful, as though the very act of marching is a language they speak fluently. You feel the ground gently tremble beneath you. the road responding to their collective weight. These are not men simply moving from one point to another. They embody Rome's reach, its discipline, its relentless push outward. A centurion walks alongside them, his vine staff tapping a measured beat against his palm. His helmet bears a transverse crest, bright and unmistakable. He surveys his unit with the calm vigilance of someone who knows each soldier's strengths and shortcomings. When one legionary adjusts the strap of his pack, the centurion's eyes flicker toward him, not with irritation, but with awareness, a natural instinct to note every detail. The march continues uninterrupted. You step aside onto the edge of the road to let the column pass. The soldiers are close enough now that you can see dust collecting in the seams of their sandals, sweat tracing lines along their temples, and the faint scuffs on their shields from earlier drills. Their cloaks sway with each step, muted red fabric catching the breeze. Some men hum low melodies to keep time. Others focus on the road ahead, conserving energy for the miles still to come. All move as if guided by a single invisible thread. The road itself demands your attention. Its construction feels deliberate beneath your feet. Layers of stones, gravel, sand, and tightly packed earth arranged with obsessive care. You can sense the engineering behind it, not as abstract knowledge, but as something physically present, something that grips the soles of your feet and insists on durability. No matter how distant the destination, how rugged the terrain, this road promises that Rome extends far beyond the horizon. It is a path built to outlive storms, armies, and the people who lay each stone. As the column moves past you, a water carrier trotting alongside offers drinks from a leather flask. A few soldiers nod in gratitude, taking brief sips without breaking stride. The coordination is remarkable. Movement and rest intertwine so seamlessly that the column never falters. You realize that these men could march for days this way, pausing only at set intervals, trusting their bodies to the rhythm of the road. Many of them have travelled hundreds of miles before, their journeys marked not by scenic landscapes, but by distances crossed at the Empire's demand. A cart creaks behind the formation, drawn by sturdy mules. It carries spare equipment, medical supplies, and the tools needed to maintain weapons and armour. The cart's driver sits with a relaxed posture, accustomed to the pace. He casually greets you as he passes, as though you have been part of this march for years. The familiarity in his expression speaks volumes about the unity required for such movements. On the road, roles vary, but purpose remains shared. The air grows warm as the march continues, stirring slight waves of heat above the stones. You fall into step behind the column, not joining it but matching its rhythm. With each stride you gain a sense of how the legionaries view the world, not as a collection of landmarks or distractions, but as distances to be crossed and duties to be fulfilled. The road ahead is everything, the road behind a lesson already absorbed. Even their shadows march with purpose, stretching long and narrow across the path. Occasionally a soldier glances toward the landscape beyond the road. Hills dotted with olive trees, small farms clustered behind low stone walls, fields shimmering in the breeze. These glimpses of calm countryside contrast sharply with the rigid pace of the march, but neither seems out of place. Rome's strength lies not just in its military prowess, but in its ability to move seamlessly between discipline and domesticity. The same road that carries soldiers to distant frontiers brings farmers' harvests into the city. Two worlds converge on these stones. You notice how skillfully the column adapts to small changes in terrain. When the road slopes upward, their formation tightens. When it narrows, their steps adjust subtly to maintain alignment. Each motion reflects training drilled into them repeatedly. Historians still argue whether Rome's military dominance came from superior tactics or sheer endurance. But as you watch these men advance, you understand how inseparable those qualities are. Strategy can win battles, but endurance wins borders. A standard bearer at the front carries the unit's insignia, a gleaming symbol that catches the light with each step. It sways slightly, the cloth rippling in the wind, leading the march like a steady beacon. The men behind it carry themselves with visible pride. That standard represents more than identification. It is a point of unity, a visible reminder that they move not as individuals, but as part of a larger, intertwined structure. Even as dust rises and clings to their legs, their discipline remains unmistakable. Eventually, the column slows near a roadside clearing. The signal to halt passes backward through the ranks with practiced efficiency. Soldiers ease their packs to the ground, stretch their bodies, and drink sparingly from their flasks. The centurion gives brief orders, his voice firm but not harsh. Some men lean against the milestone markers lining the road, their short rest resembling a well-choreographed transition rather than a break. They make use of every moment, every breath, knowing the march will resume soon. You linger at the edge of the clearing, observing the mixture of exhaustion and quiet resilience that settles over the group. A young soldier removes a stone from his sandal, grimacing as he rubs the sore spot on his heel. Another adjusts the leather straps of his armour, tightening them with deliberate care. A third cleanses Gladius with slow, practiced strokes, ensuring its readiness even though no battle awaits today. Maintenance, you realise, is its own form of discipline. As the soldiers rise and prepare to continue, the centurion glances your way, acknowledging your silent witness to their journey. Then, with a sharp call, the column reforms. Packs are lifted, shields repositioned, lines straightened. The steady beat of hobnailed sandals begins anew. You feel the vibration in the ground as they advance, carrying Rome's strength outward one measured step at a time. You follow them for a few more paces until the road forks, guiding you toward a different, quieter direction. The legionaries continue straight ahead, their formation tightening as they near the horizon. Their silhouettes shrink gradually, yet their rhythm lingers in your mind, a reminder of the power that once shaped continents. The road beneath your feet still hums with their passing, and you walk on, carrying their disciplined cadence with you as the city's next layer waits to unfold. As the cadence of the legionaries fades behind you, the road gradually quiets, leaving only the faint whisper of wind brushing across the open land, just beyond Rome's clustered buildings. The shift feels almost imperceptible at first, a softening of sound, a widening of space, yet soon you sense another presence rising around you, tall and solemn, casting long angled shadows across the earth. The silhouettes of the aqueducts emerge like colossal ribs of some ancient creature, reaching across valleys and fields with an authority too calm to be boastful. They do not march like the soldiers you left behind. They endure. Your steps draw you closer to one of these massive structures. Its stone blocks rise higher with every pace, fitted so tightly that even centuries of wind seem unable to pry them apart. The arches stretch rhythmically into the distance, each one mirroring the last, forming a procession of stone that feels both natural and impossibly deliberate. You tilt your head upward, tracing the water channel perched along the top, a narrow conduit that once carried life into Rome with unwavering persistence. Even before you hear the flow of water, soft, hidden, determined, you feel its presence. Here, Rome's thirst becomes visible. The air beneath the aqueduct shifts in temperature, growing cooler as you walk beneath its shade. The ground is darker here, streaked with patches of damp earth where small droplets have escaped through ancient cracks. You run your fingers lightly along one of the stones, feeling its texture, grainy, sun-warmed, yet still holding echoes of moisture collected in the night. This water, guided across such vast distances, was more than convenience. It was control, comfort, power. Historians still argue whether Rome's success depended more on conquest or infrastructure, but standing here beneath an aqueduct that spans miles with an almost casual certainty, the argument feels settled in stone. A worker approaches along the service path carrying a wooden pole with a metal hook attached. His tunic is dusty from climbing ladders and walking the same routes day after day. Aquariae, water inspectors, served as silent guardians of Rome's veins, ensuring that the flow remained pure, steady, uninterrupted. As he passes you, he nods with a polite familiarity, as though accustomed to people pausing in awe beneath these arches. He stops at a nearby ladder, props it carefully, and begins to climb. You listen to the steady rhythm of his steps, the gentle scrape of his pole along the stone, the faint splash of water adjusting inside the channel above. His work is neither glamorous nor visible to most citizens, yet every fountain, bath, and household cup depended on men like him. You continue walking, following the path that runs parallel to the aqueduct's base. Occasional tufts of grass sprout between stones, stirred by the light breeze. Birds perch along the upper ledges, their wings catching the sunlight before they dart into the sky. The aqueduct casts a long shadow that lines the road like a companion, moving with you, stretching farther than your eyes can follow. When you glance ahead, the arches seem to merge into the horizon, blending into the soft heat shimmer rising from the earth. A short distance away, a spur channel diverts water into the city, directing it toward fountains and the cistern. You approach one such fountain, simple, elegant, fed by a steady trickle emerging from the carved mouth of a stone lion. Even its quiet stream feels purposeful, a deliberate gesture of Rome's mastery over distant rivers and hidden springs. A young boy fills a clay jug beneath the flow, his mother watching from a few steps away. The boy lifts the jug with both hands, grunting at its weight. His mother laughs softly, encouraging him. They carry the jug together toward their home, their figures shrinking as they wind through the buildings ahead. You linger at the fountain, listening to the water's continuous murmur. Rome's residents relied on these fountains not only for drinking water, but for rhythm, a sound that threaded through daily life, reminding them of the unseen pathways overhead. In wealthy districts, water flowed extravagantly, feeding ornamental pools and bath complexes. In poorer quarters, it was drawn more sparingly. Yet no matter where you walked, water remained Rome's quiet companion, shaping streets, occupations, and social customs. Following the path again, you notice a group of labourers gathered near a reservoir. Some sit on stone steps eating olives and bread, their voices low and content. Others stand ankle-deep in the shallow basin, cleaning debris that has settled overnight. One man drags a net along the bottom, collecting leaves, twigs, and small stones. Another examines the walls for signs of wear. Their work is measured, almost meditative. When they speak, it is with the ease of those who know their tasks are essential but not urgent. The reservoir glistens in the sunlight, its surface interrupted only by the ripples from their movements. Beyond the reservoir, you find a vantage point where several aqueducts converge on the city from different directions, some still active, others standing like remnants of earlier ambitions. Their silhouettes cross and diverge, creating a lattice of stone pathways above the land. The view is breathtaking, not because of ornamentation, but because of scale. These structures do not ask for admiration, they simply deserve it. A woman in a light practical cloak approaches with baskets balanced on a wooden yoke. From her scent you guess she is a launderer, collecting fresh water for washing. She adjusts her grip, dips one basket into a side channel, and lifts it again with practiced ease. Droplets fall in shimmering arcs. She moves efficiently without rush, as though she has performed this task hundreds of times. Laundry workers in Rome often gathered near aqueduct-fed streams, washing clothes while sharing news and songs. You imagine the gentle clatter of fabric against stone, the laughter carried by the breeze, the mosaic of colours draped across sunlit banks. As the woman departs, you continue walking until the aqueduct's shadow thins and breaks where the structure begins its descent toward the city's interior. Here the air grows warmer again, the road narrows, the presence of water becomes subtler, less visible, yet still profoundly felt. You sense how these massive conduits allowed Rome to grow beyond what its natural landscape could sustain. They fed its fountains, cooled its baths, flushed its drains, and carved class distinctions into the very flow of water, some houses receiving it freely, others paying for access, still others relying solely on public distribution. Ahead, a large fountain surrounded by pillars captures your attention. Water spills gently from the tiered basins, collecting in a clear pool where citizens wash their hands and splash their faces. Children lean over the edge, soaking cloth dolls and giggling. A pair of elderly men debate the merits of different aqueduct routes, one arguing that the Aqua Marcia delivered the cleanest water, the other claiming the Aqua Virgo achieved better pressure. Their conversation is spirited, layered with years of familiarity. You smile at the thought that even in ancient Rome, debates about utilities could become passionately detailed. The fountain's spray cools the air, settling lightly on your skin. Standing here with voices swirling around you and water flowing in graceful arcs, you understand why aqueducts were considered among Rome's greatest achievements. They shaped not just the city's physical structure, but its identity. They turned parched summers into seasons of abundance, allowed public baths to flourish, and gave ordinary citizens access to luxuries once reserved for kings. Walking onward, you sense the city tightening around you once more. The aqueduct's towering form recedes behind rooftops, but its influence follows you like an echo. Every stone basin, every shaded channel, every glimmer of water on the pavement is a reminder of the hidden rivers humming above your head. Rome's thirst is unending, but so is its ingenuity. The water flows, the city breathes, and you move with it, carried along by the steady current that binds Rome's past to its present. The streets begin to fold inward again as you move away from the aqueduct's lingering shadow. The air warms noticeably, carrying with it hints of steam, mineral water, perfumed oils, and something softer, an invitation woven into the atmosphere itself. Rome's public baths do not merely appear on the horizon, they radiate outward, drawing you toward them with a gentle, persuasive gravity. The closer you come, the more the city's sounds soften, under the hum of flowing water and muffled voices resonating through cavernous halls. You're not yet inside, but already you feel the calm that these places promise to every citizen, regardless of status. Here, Rome practiced the unusual art of slowing down. A stone archway marks your entry. It swallows the outdoor brightness, ushering you into a corridor where light diffuses across smooth walls coated in pale plaster. Moisture gathers in delicate droplets on the surface, glinting under the glow of oil lamps. The air is warm, not overwhelmingly so, but with the comforting embrace of a gentle fire. Your footsteps soften against the polished floor as you move deeper, the sounds of conversation growing clearer. Low, steady murmurs rise and fall like tides, punctuated by the splash of water against marble basins. Passing into the apoditerium, the changing room, you notice the neat arrangement of cubbyholes dug into the walls. Citizens stand or sit as attendants help secure their clothing and belongings. Some speak animatedly about political rumours, others discuss family matters, and a few simply enjoy the ease of the moment. A group of friends argue cheerfully about the outcome of a chariot race, their gestures growing more expressive the longer they talk. One of them claps another on the shoulder, almost causing him to drop his sandal, and laughter spreads across the room. You drift past them, observing how the baths dissolve social boundaries more effectively than any forum or marketplace. Senators bathe beside labourers, scholars beside merchants, travellers beside locals. Here, hierarchy softens under the weight of steam. Even the attendants move with unspoken neutrality, treating every visitor with the same practiced efficiency. You hear someone mention that a philosopher is lecturing in the next room, and another whispers that a famous poet is rumoured to be soaking in the caldarium today. Whether true or exaggeration, such stories add texture to the air, infusing the baths with a sense of possibility. A doorway leads you into the tepidarium, the warm room. The lighting here is amber and gentle, filtering through stained glass windows in soft, shifting hues. The air wraps around you with a warmth so balanced that your muscles relax without needing permission. People recline against marble benches, their bodies glistening slightly with moisture. Some talk quietly, their voices rounded and calm. Others lean back, letting the room's heat unwind the tension of earlier hours. You feel your breathing deepen as the gentle warmth seeps into your limbs, smoothing the edges of your awareness. A pair of young men sits beside a pool discussing a bit of news they heard earlier, a new engineering proposal for managing river overflow. Historians will debate that for ages, one says with an amused shrug. You catch the smile in his voice, an easy acknowledgement that Rome's innovations often sparked more argument than agreement. Another man nearby murmurs something about the temperature of the water improving his mood more than any political update. The others laugh, and for a moment all conversation dissolves into shared ease. You move on toward the caldarium, the hot room. The shift is immediate. The warmth intensifies, enveloping you in thick, fragrant steam. The room echoes softly with drops of water falling from high stone ceilings. Fires heat bronze boilers behind the walls, their low rumble vibrating faintly beneath your feet. You pause at the threshold, letting the sudden heat settle around you. Within the room, silhouettes drift through steam, men reclining near the pool's edge, attendants pouring hot water into basins, elderly citizens sitting peacefully with eyes closed, letting the heat soothe old aches. You walk slowly through the vapour, tracing the arc of steam that rises from your own skin. The caldarium feels like a world unto itself, a space where time stretches and softens. Conversations here are quieter, more contemplative. A man recites lines of Greek poetry to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. Another speaks to his companion about the healing properties of certain herbs mixed into the water. You realise how these baths were not only for cleansing the body but also for clearing the mind, an ancient therapy disguised as luxury. After lingering in the heat, you make your way toward the frigidarium, where cold water waits. The transition is surprising but refreshing. The room is bright, illuminated by open skylights that let in crisp air. The pool glistens with a clarity that seems almost unreal after the mist of the caldarium. Citizens plunge into the cold water with sharp gasps and exclamations, followed quickly by relieved laughter. You approach the edge and let the cold radiate upward toward you. A brief dip sends a shiver rushing through your limbs before settling into a pleasant, invigorating clarity. Your senses sharpen, your breath steadies, and the world feels newly defined. From here you wander through a series of smaller rooms, massage chambers echoing with the sound of hands working warmed oils into tired muscles, an exercise courtyard where men practice wrestling forms or stretch deliberately, and a shaded garden where bathers cool off beneath fig trees. In the garden, fountains murmur quietly, feeding shallow channels that meander through the gravel paths. Birds hop along the edges, sipping droplets from leaves. A pair of women sits on a bench, exchanging small stories from their morning shopping. Their conversation is unhurried, braided into the space as naturally as the vines climbing the garden walls. You pause near one of the open-air pools, watching the water ripple under soft breezes. The reflections dance across the ceiling of the walkway beside you, creating shifting mosaics of light. A young boy splashes playfully at the shallow end, pursued by an older brother who pretends frustration but cannot hide his amusement. Their mother sits nearby, dipping her hands into the water, letting the coolness flow through her fingers. Scenes like these make the baths feel less like grand architecture and more like an extension of the city's heart, a place where Rome remembered its humanity. The scent of oils drifts toward you: lavender, myrrh, rose, and hints of crushed mint. A group of attendants prepares small bowls of scented mixtures for massage clients, carefully stirring them to achieve perfect consistency. One offers a bowl to you with a respectful nod, inviting you to inhale the fragrance. You do, and the scent settles warmly at the back of your mind, subtly shifting your awareness toward calm. Returning to the main corridor, you feel the baths wrapping around you with layered warmth, like a memory slowly embedding itself. You realize how deeply these spaces mattered to Romans, not just as hygienic centers, but as meeting places, social networks, intellectual hubs, and emotional sanctuaries. Here, friendships were strengthened, debates began, ideas exchanged, grievances aired, and tensions dissolved. The baths formed a mirror of Rome itself, structured yet fluid, busy yet peaceful, grand yet deeply personal. As you exit through the tall archway into the sunlit street, the air feels lighter against your skin, cooler than you remember. The soft roar of the baths lingers in your ears like a distant echo, a reminder of steam-filled halls and warm stone benches. You walk forward with loosened muscles and a tranquil mind, carrying the bath's serenity with you as the city's next rhythm begins to rise ahead. The warmth of the baths lingers in your limbs as you step back into the open streets, leaving behind the drifting steam and soft echo of water. The city feels different now, crisper, more textured, its scents sharpened by the freshness clinging to your skin. You follow the gentle pull of the air, which carries traces of something familiar and comforting. Warm grain, yeast rising, the faint smokiness of wood-fired ovens. Rome, for all its political grandeur, is still a place that wakes each morning to the rumble of hunger, and you find yourself moving instinctively toward the district where food begins its daily journey into countless households. The first sign you're nearing the baker's quarter is the glow, a colour that doesn't belong to sunlight but to firelight, carefully managed behind thick stone walls. It flickers across the street in soft gold swells as a bakery door swings open. The baker emerges, arms dusted white, carrying a paddle longer than his own height. He pauses to stretch his back before re-entering the warm cave of his shop. From this brief glimpse alone, you can feel the weight of his morning. Hours of kneading, checking dough, tending fires, shaping loaves. Romans depended on men like him more than any general or philosopher. Bread was not luxury, it was life. You step inside the bakery's doorway, letting the heat wrap around you. The flames in the domed oven pulse with quiet determination, their orange glow licking at the curved interior. Rows of round loaves cool on wooden racks, each imprinted with a unique stamp, a baker's signature, a guarantee of origin. The scents draw you deeper: tangy sourdough, sweet honey bread, the earthy warmth of whole grain. A young apprentice moves briskly between tables, brushing flour from the counters and stacking fresh loaves inside baskets. His hands are steady, bearing the confidence of someone who has learned to read dough as though it were a language. The master baker glances up long enough to greet you with a simple nod. His face is flushed from the heat, but his eyes shine with the quiet pride of a morning well underway. He slices open a loaf to check its texture, releasing a burst of fragrant steam. The interior is airy and warm, threaded with perfect pockets of softness. He presses the crust lightly, listening for the crisp whisper that signals success. Satisfied, he sets the loaf aside and begins shaping the next batch, his fingers moving with a rhythm as practiced as a musician's. Stepping back into the street, you notice workers delivering sacks of grain to nearby shops. Each sack bears markings from different regions, Campania, Sicily, even in farther provinces. Grain travels farther than most people ever will, crossing seas and borders to reach these ovens. Some of the carriers hum quietly under their breath as they work, melodies woven from different homelands. They move with efficiency but without rush, as though participating in a ritual they know will repeat tomorrow and the next day and the next. Following the aroma of toasted flour, you wander toward a row of smaller family kitchens. These are not shops but households preparing meals for their own families, or for neighbours who stop by to purchase small bowls of cooked dishes. A woman stands at a wide windowsill, grinding herbs with a stone pestle. The scent of crushed basil and parsley drifts through the street, mixing with garlic sizzling in oil inside her home. She pauses to wipe her brow, then adds handfuls of finely chopped leeks to the pan behind her. The sound of the vegetables hitting the hot oil crackles like applause. A boy stands beside her, shaping small rounds of dough. He glances at you shyly before returning to his task with deep concentration. His dough rounds will become flatbreads cooked directly over a clay surface inside their hearth. The mother murmurs encouragement, gently correcting his technique. Their small kitchen hums with warmth and purpose, offering a glimpse into the intimate rituals that sustain Rome far more reliably than marble monuments. Farther down the street you encounter a cookshop, one of the popinae that serves simple meals to workers, travellers and locals who prefer not to cook at home. The owner leans against the counter, stirring a pot of lentils simmering with vinegar and herbs. The smell is earthy and comforting. Clay pots line the counter's embedded holes, each kept warm by coals beneath. Customers dip ladles into the dishes, serving themselves and handing coins to the owner with casual familiarity. Conversations overlap around you. Talks of early work shifts, small neighbourhood disputes, the unpredictable price of olives this season. You sit on a nearby bench carved into the wall. From here you can see an elderly woman selling olives from a large bowl. Green, black, wrinkled, glossy. She spears samples with a thin sliver of wood, offering taste to passers-by. Her hands are worn but graceful as she arranges the olives in tiny pyramids that catch the light. A man buys a handful, thanks her warmly, and adds them to the loaf of bread tucked beneath his arm. He offers a piece to his daughter, who giggles as she tries to balance a single olive on top of her bread. Turning toward a quieter alley, you follow the sound of knives tapping against wooden boards. A group of household cooks gather here to prepare ingredients for wealthier families. They crouch beside large baskets, slicing vegetables with remarkable speed. Leeks pile into heaps. Carrots are shaved thin as threads. Aromatic fennel is chopped with rhythmic precision. One of the cooks, humming a gentle tune, tosses herbs into a bowl and mixes them with olive oil using her fingers. She pauses to taste, adjusting the mixture with a pinch of salt. Her expression softens in satisfaction. A narrow side door opens, releasing the scent of roasting onions and minced meat spiced with pepper. The cook inside quickly closes it again to keep the heat from escaping. You realise how every home, regardless of size, has its own culinary world, different seasonings, different tools, different stories woven into the pots and pans. Recipes passed quietly through generations leave their marks on these walls, their layers of steam and spice absorbed into the stone. The sound of a millstone turning draws you towards another courtyard. Here, a donkey walks in a slow circle, powering the grinding of grain. The stone turns steadily, and flour sifts down like pale snowfall, collecting in wooden bins. A miller crouches nearby, inspecting the texture of the flour between his fingers, adjusting the stone's angle to achieve a perfect consistency. He wipes sweat from his brow and offers a handful of grain to the donkey, who accepts it with gentle patience. The rhythm of the mill is soft but steady, a heartbeat that has powered countless kitchens across the city. Beyond the courtyard, you follow the scent of simmering sauces, Wine reductions, vinegar blends, broths thickened with lentils. A young woman stands near a clay hearth, stirring a pot with careful circular motions. Steam coils around her face, blurring her features slightly, but her eyes remain focused. She tastes the broth, nods, and adds a splash of fish sauce from a small amphora. The pungent aroma unfolds, weaving itself into the air. Garum, Rome's unmistakable culinary fingerprint, transforms even the simplest dishes into something deeply flavourful. It is not universally beloved, but here its presence feels essential. Stepping away from the hearth, you wander toward a quieter lane lined with fruit sellers. Baskets overflow with apples, pears, figs and plums. A merchant slices open a ripe fig, offering the halves to two customers who savour it with visible delight. Fruit was seasonal and precious, its arrival on the streets a reminder of Rome's shifting cycle of abundance. The merchant laughs when a small child tries to grab a second fig without paying, gently redirecting him toward a cheaper piece of fruit. The child accepts it with a smile. You pause in a patch of sunlight, feeling the warmth soak into your clothes. All around you, Rome's kitchens, private, public, humble, grand, pulse with activity. Bread being shaped, olives being tasted, dough rising, garlic sizzling, flour settling. Every scent mingles into a soft, textured harmony. This city, often defined by emperors, wars and monuments, is just as deeply defined by the people who spent their mornings chopping vegetables, grinding grain, boiling lentils, roasting meats and kneading dough. Their hands keep Rome alive day after day. As you move onward, leaving behind the cooks, bakers and kitchen workers, you carry with you the warmth of ovens, the hum of conversations, and the unmistakable comfort of bread cooling on racks. Rome's story is written in stone, yes, but it is also written in flour and fire, in simmering pots and steaming hearths, in the scents that linger long after the dishes have been eaten. The aromas of kitchens and the warmth of household ovens drift behind you as you step once more into the open street, where the light seems to sharpen against the stones in crisp, clean angles. With each breath the air feels clearer, touched by dust stirred from long stretches of road ahead. You sense that Rome is preparing to show you another of its great foundations, not a bustling marketplace or a crowded district, but the network of roads that quietly binds the entire empire together. Even within the city, the streets that feed into these grand routes feel different. Wider in some places, straighter in others, shaped not for wandering but for purpose. The hum of activity shifts, growing quieter yet more focused, until you realize you are entering a space defined by craft, precision, and connection. At first, you notice only the structure of the pavement beneath your feet. The stones are larger here, set with deliberate geometry. Each slab has been fitted with such skill that the seams between them form nearly perfect lines, straight, confident, unwavering. You slow your pace, letting the careful arrangement reveal itself. The stones are crowned at the centre and slope gently toward the sides to carry rainwater away. Even the tiniest details speak of forethought. These are not casual walkways, they are arteries built to carry the lifeblood of an empire. Ahead, a group of surveyors stands gathered around a measuring rod planted firmly in the earth. One man lifts a sighting instrument, aligning its edges with an unseen point in the distance. Surveyors, agrimensors, were the architects of Rome's reach, the quiet minds behind the straight roads that carried messages, soldiers, merchants, and dreams from distant provinces into the city's heart. Their gestures are precise, each adjustment measured with care. You watch them murmur instructions to one another, marking distances with chalk and string. Their focus is so intense that the surrounding sounds seem to fade, leaving only the faint scratch of stylus on wax tablets. A little farther along you find a team of road workers kneeling beside a half-dug trench. Their tools, Picks, shovels, tampers lie within easy reach. They're preparing the foundation for a road repair, layering gravel and packed earth before placing the next row of heavy stones. One worker, his tunic stained with dust and sweat, pounds the ground with a rammer until the earth compacts into a firm, unyielding base. Another sets a stone into place, adjusting it again and again until it aligns seamlessly with its neighbours. There is an artistry in their movements, the blend of strength and finesse, the instinctive knowledge of weight and balance. You kneel briefly to touch one of the stones laid long ago. Its surface is worn smooth from centuries of feet, wheels and hooves passing over it, yet its edges remain solid. This durability is no accident. Rome built these roads to last, constructing them in layered sequences, large stones below, gravel and sand above, then paving stones carefully placed on top. The result is a road that can bear immense strain without shifting. You feel this strength beneath your fingertips, a reminder of how infrastructure can outlive entire generations. As you rise and continue onward, the road widens into a straight path that seems to stretch far beyond the vantage point of your eyes. The lines extending toward the horizon evoke a pull, gentle yet certain, as though inviting you to imagine the countless journeys that began right here. Merchants leading donkey caravans laden with goods, messengers carrying orders sealed with wax, travellers returning home after years abroad, soldiers marching to or from distant campaigns. Every story carved into these stones contributes to the empire's shared memory. A group of merchants soon approaches, their carts rattling softly with bundles wrapped in cloth. They greet one another in friendly tones, comparing the conditions of various routes they recently travelled. One mentions flooding along a river crossing. Another describes a new bridge being constructed in the north. Their dialogue paints an invisible map in your mind, revealing a network far larger than the city around you. Rome's genius was not simply building roads, it was building continuity. You walk beside them for a short distance, letting their conversation guide your thoughts. The merchants stop near a large milestone planted firmly at the road's edge. It is cylindrical, weathered yet still legible. Inscribed upon it are distances to nearby towns, and the name of the emperor under whose reign the road was last restored. Milestones served as Rome's subtle reminders that every journey was counted, every mile acknowledged. They reassured travellers that they were not lost, that they moved within a system understood by countless others. As the merchants depart, you step toward a bridge whose arch spans a small ravine. The engineering here is as impressive as any monument in the city. The arch curves with such perfect symmetry that it appears almost effortless, though you know it hides layers of calculated design. Water glimmers below, flowing steadily over stones. A shepherd leads a flock across the bridge, their wool brushing lightly against your clothes as they pass. The bridge does not tremble beneath them, it stands firm, silent, ready for whatever weight the day brings. Continuing onward, you encounter a small workshop maintained by road engineers. Stonecutters shape replacement paving slabs, tapping their chisels with sharp, rhythmic clicks. A master mason examines their work, ensuring each stone is angled properly to shed water. Beside him sits a wooden tray filled with tools, plumb lines, levels, squid rulers. These items may seem simple, but in the hands of skilled craftsmen, they shape the landscape itself. When the mason catches your curious gaze, he lifts one of the squared rulers to illustrate how he checks each corner, then returns swiftly to his inspection. Farther along the road, a courier gallops past on horseback, kicking up dust. His cloak snaps behind him, and the leather satchel strapped across his chest bulges with sealed messages. He lowers his body close to the horse's neck, urging it forward with controlled urgency. You feel the wind created by his passage brush lightly against your skin. Couriers relied on these roads more than anyone. Without them, the Empire's communication network would collapse. Watching him disappear into the distance, you recognize how much of Rome's stability depended on speed. You pause at a small rest area built beside the road. A traveller sits on a stone bench, removing his sandals to massage his feet. He nods in greeting and explains that he has been walking for 3 days from a neighbouring town. His provisions, bread wrapped in cloth, dried figs, a small flask of wine, rest beside him. He describes the scenery he has passed, occasionally pointing south or east as to indicate distant landmarks. His journey feels simple, yet every detail carries the weight of human endurance and the quiet resilience that defined so many Roman journeys. Beyond the rest area, you hear the creaking of wagon wheels. A farmer has loaded his cart with vegetables and clay jars filled with oil. The ox pulling the cart moves steadily, its bells chiming gently with each step. The farmer strokes the ox's side, speaking softly to it, guiding it around a group of children who chase each other across the road. Despite the activity, the road never loses its clarity or purpose. Every movement on it feels part of a greater pattern. You find yourself marvelling not just at the craftsmanship behind the roads, but at the way they ask nothing of those who use them except movement. They do not dictate the purpose of your travel, the weight you carry, or the destination you seek. They simply offer direction, support, and continuity. In this way, Rome's roads become more than infrastructure. They are promises, silent commitments that wherever you travel, you are still connected to something larger than yourself. Ahead, another milestone stands at the road's edge. Moss has begun to grow around its base, softening the stone's edges. You touch it gently, feeling the cool surface under your fingertips. Generations before you have passed this point. Soldiers, traders, labourers, families, wanderers. Their footsteps remain in the air, faint echoes brushing past your awareness. You imagine their conversations, their hopes, their burdens. This road, like all Roman roads, is not just a path through geography. It is a path through time. You continue walking, allowing the harmony between your steps and the stones to deepen. The road guides you forward with patient certainty. Its straight lines hold you steady. Its strength supports you without strain. And as you follow its course, you understand that the engineer's footpath is not solely about construction. It is about connection, resilience, and the enduring idea that movement builds civilization. The stones beneath you gleam softly as the light shifts, and the road carries you onward, ready to reveal the next layer of Rome's living story.